Welcome to this episode of COVID Talk. I am so excited about this episode because every now and again I meet someone where I just like learn a shit ton. And last time I was in New York, I got to meet the legendary James Hill. James, welcome. How are you feeling?
I'm doing all right, man. Thank you very much. It's good to see you.
Rock and roll. Last time we spoke, you taught me a hell of a lot about branding, and I want to really get into that. And I want to talk about how people think about their brands, especially for like musicians, artists, people starting businesses, just kind of personal profiles and how the world's shifting and just how important it is, because you're obviously an expert in that. But I think before I kick off, I probably just wanted to give you a minute to just maybe introduce yourself a little bit to my listeners, a little bit about what you do, who you are, what you got going on. Over to you.
Sure. James Hill. I have been working with artists, primarily photographers, for the last 25 years. We don't like to call ourselves agents anymore because that somehow became a very bad word. I'm sure we'll get into that later. So now I'm a manager of my artists, and I executive produce for a fantastic marketing and branding agency, 6+1. And we just try to help people understand better who they are and what it is that they try to figure out what it is that they want the public to know about them and make sure that we get that message out. And one of the things that we stand by the most is a saying called disruption for good, which is something that, I'm sure I'll be able to explain a little bit more as we speak. But we're literally doing that right now. We're kind of following the lead of you and the things that you've taught me with the NFT space of really doing more to help artists, help our photographers, try to manage them in a way that has never been done before with regards to putting them first. And it's exciting. We're really excited about it.
I mean, I've just loved to see the development as well of everything you're doing. The first place I want to start is what you said about the branding thing, because when I left you when I was here a couple of months ago, you really changed my mentality on how I think about my representation. I think you really hit the nerve with me on a couple of things about asking the right questions of who you are. And I think you just touched on it then when you were like figuring out who you are and then how to communicate that as best possible. And for my crew and the people listening, like definitely independent artists or artists developing their fan base, I feel like this is such a critical thing that is like a solidified kind of philosophy for you in terms of thinking about how to position yourself. I don't know if you want to kind of explore that a little bit more.
Sure. I mean, I just feel like, branding has become a very trendy word. Everybody says it, oh, I'm into branding. I have to brand myself. But most people don't truly understand what that means. And most people are not taking full advantage of the opportunities before themselves to brand themselves as a product, as a person, whatever the case may be. And I think because of that, a lot of their message is lost. Branding is more than just image. It's about how people perceive you. It's how people understand you, how you elicit an emotion from people. And all of those things are just so important when it comes to selling yourself, which is the primary reason why people brand, whatever it is. If you're a musician, you want people to buy your music, but what's your music about? Is it about you? And what does that mean? Like if you can really master what your story is and then become a master at telling that story, I think success follows.
Why do you think it's so hard for people?
I think it's hard because one of the hardest things that I think that exists for humans, barring those rare, few, to talk about yourself. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's, not everybody's Muhammad Ali who understood it seems like from birth. But, at the end of the day, most of us, it's very easy for us to watch something, see it happening to somebody else, and give an elegant description on, how it should be handled. And then when we're in that same position, we fumble and just can't quite get it together. And I think because of that, it makes branding hard. And then I think, message is important. We could sometimes get very caught up in the glitz and the glam of what people perceive as marketing, branding, and advertising that we don't quite get to look into the ethos of it.
What do you mean by that? Like,
you take a brand like Apple is a perfect example. They have amazing shows to let us know what new products are coming out. They have fantastic stores where we go in and we see all of these beautifully designed, sleek, products that just make us go, oh my goodness, this brand. It's like, yeah, but their brand is simple. Like who they actually are is they build technology to make human life easier. That's it. That's what they do. It's like they're not out here trying to design the coolest phone. They're not. It's not their goal. Their goal is for the phone to make your life easy, to integrate into your life. I used to have he's still my friend and he actually works there. And I would always tell him my favorite thing about working with an Apple product is when I get frustrated with it, I stop and have to remember this is supposed to be making my life easier. So I must be the problem. And then when I take when I take that moment to just kind of slow my brain down and think about it, it usually is pretty simple. Like if you ever spend any time in a Genius Bar, I appreciate that they take the machine away from you so you don't watch them just turn it off and turn it back on and them say it now works. You know what I mean? So, I think that, we think about photo shoots, we think about video shoots, we think about how it's going to look. Worry about that later. Worry about what it is that you're trying to say.
All right, that's one of the nuggets that you went through with me before. That is almost certainly not how people think. It's definitely not usually how I think, and every musician or every artist I've ever worked with is usually like, I want to go on a video shoot. I want to make a music video. I want the pictures to look sick. I want this. I want that. I want that. So like your attitude is coming in at going, right, forget all of that for a second. Isolate the why you're doing it and then build the photo shoots and the music videos and the aesthetics for your business and your logo, everything after the fact is basically what.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it starts, I think that, and this is just my opinion, I don't have anything really solid to base this on, but somehow style became more important than substance, and that should never have been the case. It's like you can go to a really, really beautiful restaurant and it's amazing. It's just visually, it's just the food comes and it looks stunning, but if it's awful, the service was awful. Do you care how beautiful it was? No. Then you can go to a hole in the wall. Like you even say that term, no matter where you're from, what part of the world you're from. Say a hole in the wall, people already know, like, okay, yeah, this is the place that you go to. It doesn't look great, but the people in it are pretty awesome. The food or the drink or whatever it is amazing. It's like, because they're coming from a place of substance. And I think that it's easy to get distracted by glitz and it's got to look a certain way. But no, if you surround yourself with professionals who care, it'll take care of itself. But if they don't have the right direction, it can get lost. And we run into that a lot. Even with our clients, we love working with clients that know exactly who they are. They know exactly the message they want to get out there. When you do a photo shoot or a video shoot or you do any branding exercise with them, they can tell you even before they can tell you during a session, they can say, no, we don't like that, or we don't this. So when you're editing in the end, it's amazing and everybody loves it. But then you have a brand that's kind of learning about themselves, trying to figure out who they are. They're there, they're on set, they're art directing with you. Then you show them the finished product and they're kind of like, I don't know if this is, it's like you were there. Like we were literally following your direction. Why? Well, because they're still trying to learn who they are. They're still working on that ethos, that substance.
What advice would you give when it comes to people who are still in the process of that? Because, I mean, I have to put my hand up. I remember going on my first video shoots and then you're trying to fix stuff in post because, this is not quite right, whatever. And there is a process of whether it be self-discovery, also trying to understand where you slot in with all of these new platforms. You've got like Instagram Reels and Facebook, TikTok and YouTube Shorts. And there's just this bombardment of like, you feel as a creative or a business that you need to somehow be delivering all of these different forms of content that are going to fit the mold of all these different places. And what advice would you be giving to people in that developmental area of their career on how to think and how to attack that demand?
I would say to take your time. I would say to consider a team, to help you learn certain things. You are an element of that. I was bombarded with, I work with artists and all of a sudden NFT became like
Yeah.
the things. Like, we got to get NFTs. We got to get NFTs. And as you recall, it was just, I don't know what an NFT is, man. Tell me more about it. You know, it's like you explained it to me. It's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get it. So communication is always going to be the key with anything that you're trying to approach. And I would say to everyone, as I've been saying to my own artists, you know, it's if you've been doing something long enough, technology, the world is going to change around you.
That's a cool one.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it is.
yeah.
So, you know, I could be working with a photographer who's been in the game for, you know, over 2 decades. He or she didn't have to worry about Instagram when he or she started. So now the mindset is like, I have to learn how to, you know, hashtag, and I have to learn how to, you could have learned that. You could work with somebody who already knows it. And all you do is just focus on your message. You know, all these different platforms are amazing. And I think that they have undoubtedly changed the world, changed how we do business. You know, they changed everything. But I think that the key for us as individuals who are using those platforms is they're there for you. You're not there for them. You know what I mean? That's the thing that I think is often missed. Like, you know, I have to learn how to talk so that the algorithm of Instagram will recognize. Good luck, because they might change it next week. Yeah. So you might as well just tell your story on the multiple platforms and stay true to you.
It's funny how deeply you answer that question, because, you know, I jump on Discord before these things. I'm like, look, I'm speaking to this person. Have you got questions? And I always put questions in. And one of the most common ones was what I just asked before about, like, what do you do with all of this demand of all of these different platforms? And essentially what you're saying is, like, you have to realize that the demand's the other way around. It's how much you're going to deliver to those platforms that can be useful. Not thinking, shit, I've really got to, like, post 3 times a day on, like, 20 different platforms and spend my entire life servicing these algorithmic machines that are going to decide my fate or whether or not I'm successful or not. And just focusing in on that core principle. It's like, it's funny and also almost irritating how simple it is, but how easily it is to be convinced otherwise.
Correct. And part of that is because not only are we bombarded with the thought of what we have to put out, we're sometimes 200 to 400% more overwhelmed with what's being put out that we are seeing. You know, that's the other part. It's like, you know, it's not enough for me to work with a photographer. That photographer has to now see other photographers on social media, and they're doing it this way, so I kind of have to do it this way. Or, you know, you're dealing with I have a friend, Sasha Mercy, does amazing, you know, comedy work, and I always because she's my friend, I obviously follow her, but it cracks me up now that when she is truest to herself on social media, I love it the most. You know what I mean? It's like whether it's a happy moment, whether it's a reflective moment, whether it's something that she's just giving us an intimate look into her life moment, it's like, that's it. That's it, you know? And then, you know, you have people like another dear friend of mine, Khalil Roundtree, who had a fantastic moment recently where in the spur of the moment, he gave one of the most heartfelt post-fight interviews in the history of mixed martial arts, and his social media blew up. And it's just like, it's amazing what happens when you're you. It's amazing what happens when you're you. But, you know, it's like, I've had those moments, you know, where I really study and take my time to write this elegant caption before I post on social media, and nothing. Nobody, you know, gets the least amount of likes. And then
I think it's the filter. I call it, like, it's like the great filter of thinking, it's not just about you putting yourself out there. You're considering how people are going to think of you, and then how that's going to affect, like, your personal representation.
Right.
And I think it's nerve-wracking. I mean, you're spot on. I've felt times in my life where I have just done things of spur of the moment, and it just does work and it connects. But it still feels strange, doesn't it, to give such an intimate part of yourself out to, like, a social media mechanism. But, like,
I mean, I think that part is just part of
human
us.
nature.
You know, I think if you are a very public person, which I think is, you know, the younger you are, potentially the easier that will be, because you're already used to the world being this way. You know, I am, you know, I'm older. I'm in a little bit of an elder statesman at this point, where, you know, we kept our mouths shut, my generation, you know, until we were asked. You know, this generation doesn't have to do that. You know, the platforms have made it so that they can say whatever they want, you know, on anything. But, you know, as you and I kind of discussed prior, I always love the idea of something going viral, you know, for good or for bad. But the funny part is how people try to plan something viral. That never works. Like, I love it.
Have you heard about the Will Smith?
Yes.
I just caught that this morning.
Yeah, like, like when it happened, I had tremendous amount of feelings on it that it will be for another podcast for another day. But it was like, you knew it was going to go viral. It's like, then what was the first thing that a lot of people thought? Well, was it staged?
Yeah.
You see, that's what I mean. It's like, and if it was staged, I think it drops. Like, people aren't as interested.
You can tell in that moment it's not staged.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was
I didn't think it was. I didn't think
you
it was.
You could see the
staged.
emotion in his face, right, when he's sitting down. It's like that touched the nerve, and it's just like, I just can't believe that happened on live TV. I can't believe he did that. He's always been a very like chilled guy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a. Like I said, I will go off on a tangent. I mean, I genuinely applaud anybody who feels they have to defend their family. I think there are ways to defend your family that don't resort to violence. And I want to, applaud Chris Rock for not allowing it to escalate.
You took that like a champ, didn't he?
Because
it's just like,
Will was able to walk away legitimately with no fear that there was going to be any repercussions. And I think that takes a certain type of genius. And I think that
for him to laugh about,
Chris did something amazing for comics. Like, as much as we can all figure out if he knew about Jada's condition, we can all speculate that. But I don't suggest anybody in this room just decide to get up and assault me. That might not work out the way they think. You know what I mean? And the fact that it didn't escalate beyond that is a really great moment. So I hope that they talk about it. I hope that it annoys me that two legends, absolute legends at what they do, have been resorted to an image that is just going to continue to be run over and over again on social media. It's the cover of the post, like it's the cover of so many, it's just an unfortunate situation for what was supposed to be a pretty glorious night for Mr. Smith, indeed.
But in a way, it kind of does tie in with the conversation we're having about branding and image. I mean, like, Will is such a great example of like the friendly guy next door, very collected, very calm, very happy all the time. And it's like that's been built over decades. And it's like in one moment, it can just...
Well, and I think that what's even more intriguing is his branding is changing, because that's also the part of evolution. I think that when he was just the Fresh Prince, he was this happy-go-lucky dude. Now he's got a family. His family has gone through things that families go through. He has a riveting autobiography that I've read where, he speaks about things similar to this. He speaks about being afraid to stand up to people and for his family, his own family. So, the emotional speech that he gave after he won Best Actor kind of came full circle. But it's like his brand is in a very interesting state right now. And I think that, he's done enough where I don't think, as the kid said, I don't think he's going to be canceled for what happened or anything. But, his brand is in an interesting place. And quite frankly, I'm intrigued to see how it's going to further evolve after last night.
How do you feel about when it comes to people who might have a kind of embedded brand and they start to, a question that I've had with kind of many creatives through my time is when people feel they've been pigeonholed, like someone's an acoustic singer-songwriter, or maybe someone's a photographer who works on like a very specific kind of niche of photography, and they kind of go, look, I've built my career up to this point, and I feel like it's time for me to make a shift and to make a pivot towards something kind of greater, or at least something that I want to do. How do you tend to advise and approach like a real brand pivot and actually moving away from something you were before? Like you call it an evolution, but I guess this must be a process where you still have just as much kind of consideration for it as anything else.
Sure. I mean, I think in that regard, the key to it is authenticity. You got to mean it. If for whatever reason you're doing the pivot, you got to mean it, because people will sniff it out. We just, like right now, we're in the midst of, Women's History Month. We just finished Black History Month. It's if you're a company, if you're a brand, you got to be careful just throwing an image up, or throwing up a little, maybe a carousel and a story. It's like, make sure it stays true, because otherwise that's very easy to sniff out. It's like you're just checking a box. And I think that if you are trying to pivot, why are you trying to pivot? Speak to that. You know what I mean? I think that the great thing about the platforms that we speak of is the authenticity of who you are at your core comes out. You know what I mean? And if you do a good job of that, well, you're kind of doing an excellent job with branding. Like, yeah, there's some other tricks, that can really excel a brand. But for the most part, if you're not coming from an authentic place, you're going to fail,
It hits a nerve personally, because when I started this project, there will be people listening who remember like the very first days of my music project. And I think there was a bit of anxiety and nervousness that I had about like getting on stage, performing in front of a lot of people. I used to like wear these hoods and shit, and I used to have a very mysterious like image, and it was like never like showing my face and stuff on socials. It was like, it made me kind of comfortable because it felt okay to have that animosity and still be able to do what I wanted to do. But it just wasn't right, because it wasn't like really me, if that makes sense. It was like a plaster on a bullet wound kind of thing.
Right.
And like I've always hid like my interest of, like business and entrepreneurship. I've always like kept that quiet, because I'm supposed to be like this artist, and people are going to think I'm not cool if I'm like also involved in business. And it's like, and it was funny. And I remember my brand pivot was like a year in, and I thought, shit, like I can't keep going out on stage wearing a fucking hood and like keeping my face hidden.
Right.
And I just did it, and I was like, right, you know what? I want to wear a suit. Like I want to go out and represent. I want to represent myself well. I want to dress well for the people that I'm performing for. I want to put on a show. And it was like almost the second that first picture hit, where instead of this hood and stuff, I'm like in one of my jackets, and I'm going out on stage, and it's so interesting how you break that down, because I kind of discovered that the hard way. And for a lot of people, there's just a compass in your gut. There's a little thing pulling you in a direction. It's hard to quantify. I think sometimes it's hard to even concrete the philosophy of what you're trying to do. But there's something in my gut saying, this doesn't feel right, and it felt like weight had been lifted off my shoulder. As soon as I pivoted that moment and carried on, the momentum just begun. And I think that is a big part of what you say. It's like it always has to be authentic. It has to be from your soul almost.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like what you said, like the initial version of you was just not you. It was just something that you did for comfort's sake.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's fine. But see, like anybody who would ask anything about that, would be able to tell you, like, yeah, man, it was good to see you. You know what I mean? And it's like, and that's, you having the ability to tell that story, it's relatable. You know what I mean? It's relatable, and I think that, that's something that goes a really, really long way with branding, and it goes a really long way with life. It's relatable moments, and I think that we sometimes we sleep on that, because we think we have to be extraordinary. It's like, nah, you don't. Like, there are certain people that are just extraordinary, but when you think about what it is that they do, when you get an opportunity to speak to that individual on a human level, they don't even think they're extraordinary, and I think that, like I said, we just get caught up, and it's very easy to get caught up, more easy, today than ever before, because of the bombardment of just data.
And how do you think people get themselves out of that data flow? Like, how do you feel people when they're listening to you talk and they're starting to now think about their brand and their positioning, and we all feel the pressure of all of these different kind of profiles? How do you think the best way of bringing that focus in for that client or that business or that person, how would you suggest they go about it?
Man, that's a tough question, Mark. Take a beat. Just take a beat. You know what I mean? It's like, which sounds awkward to say now, because, the pandemic caused us all to kind of take a beat. But, if we think about it down the line, my hope is that the reset that we all needed is going to be a brilliant kind of look back on in history. It sucked to go through it, but most things that are, potentially life-changing suck to go through it. I've often likened it to, if you were told that you had a life-threatening disease, think about how that would crush your soul in that moment. But then the doctor tells you, it's like, but we caught it early. And I think if we stick to this regimen, if we put in this work, you're going to be just fine. Well, 5 years later, you look back at that, you're like, man, that was the best year of my life. Changed. I'm so much better. Take a minute, like figure out, like, and again, I can't stress enough. I have a team. I have people that I work with. I love the team that I work with. There's nothing wrong with raising your hand and saying, I don't quite get it yet. I mean, I have an idea of the direction I want to go. I have an idea of the message that I want to put out there, but I need to flesh it out a little bit. I need to learn a little bit. And I think that taking that time will go a long way at the reset. When it comes to the bombardment of data coming at you, put the phone down every once and again. You know what I mean? And it's weird. Disconnect to reconnect. You kind of gotta do. And have in addition to your team, have that crew though. You need your crew too. You need the people that just know you as who you are as a person, don't really care about what you do for a living. And when you talk to them, they kind of give you that face. They don't even really need to say anything, and it's just that face lets you know I'm doing too much. like I need to just kind of scale it back a little bit, or they'll give you the other end of the spectrum, like you're not doing enough. Like get out there, and go attain whatever it is that you're trying to attain. But I think take a moment. If you have questions about what it is that you're trying to do, try to answer those before you take steps
and
forward.
That's something that you do, like obviously with 6+1 and all the people that you work with. It seems to be something that you often deal with. You have to help people through that, and you have to figure out what they're about. Like, are there questions that you ask people often about, like when you go through those consultations? Like for people listening, what are the sort of questions that you'd be like, look, think about this? I know you said obviously you've got to kind of think about who you are, but I mean, constructing that brick by brick, it's got to be a lot more than just that, right?
I mean, it's more, but not a lot more. If I'm being honest, it's not. Because while branding is something that's exciting, we're not out here saving lives. It's not. We're trying to change the world. Via branding and advertising, yes, but for what we do here is, when I'm working with, my artists, I just want to know what they want, and that sometimes is a loaded question because, the easy question is we want money. Oh, yeah, okay. Everybody, we were in business to make money. That makes sense. But, how do you want to do it? I've had an artist tell me flat out, he's like, he wants to work less so that he can live a better life. That warmed my heart. It was like, if I can help you accomplish that, that will be amazing. That would be absolutely amazing. I have an artist that wants to do better with their social media. Why? What do you want to get out of it? Is it followers? Is it work? We got to know that, because analytics might tell us you're doing so much more with engagement, but if that wasn't your goal, then what's the point?
It's a particularly good shout, because every musician in the world says, well, I just want more Spotify listeners. And it's like, okay, like where? You can get 1 billion Spotify listeners from like Indonesia through online ads, like if you want to get a load of robotic people coming in and following it. But that's an interesting one. So it's like going that extra step further and going, why is it that you want to achieve this goal, and what's the expectation that you're going to get out of it? Those all play a part when you're considering about the functionality of the brand.
Right.
And that leads on to another, what I thought was a really good question, and probably a hard one to answer. But it is a great question. Someone said through Discord was like why? Why is it so important? Because the conversation was like, branding is probably quite expensive when you think about whether it's like your logo and your type fonts that you're going to use and the colors on your website and building a website and like, like a color grade if you're going to use this. It's like, why? It's not important to get all that stuff right. And I'm like, that's an interesting question for James Hill. Why? Why is it so important for these things to be accurate?
Because once it's accurate and it's out there, it becomes recognition. That's really all. That's what branding is about. Like you think of Nike, Just Do It is something that we all know. But what has amazed me about their brand is they've taken Just Do It and they put it kind of everywhere. Before it was just do it on the track. They were running shoes, and then they were like, just do it on a basketball court. Now it's just do it politically, just do it emotionally, just do it when it comes to mental health. When you see, that brand, when you see the swoosh, you associate it with excellence. You know what I mean? They could have, every time they tackled a new medium, they could have maybe changed the logo, maybe gave the logo a little something else, and they would have got lost. It's like, that's a good look. The reason why, when you work with certain companies, there's a brand Bible is what they call it. It's just like, it's all the colors that you can use and the colors that they like and the fonts, as you mentioned, that they like, the messaging that they like. When you see it, you know it, and with the more familiar, consumers can get, the more comfortable they become, that becomes an easier thing to follow. Like they know what they're going to get when they see it. Have you ever given a person you love a blue box from Tiffany's?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Branding works.
Yeah.
It's like it almost doesn't matter what's in the box. It's just, ooh. The red box from Cartier. It's like those things matter. Like getting it right, seems in the beginning, especially when you're trying to start, like, why do I need this? Well, try building it after you skipped it. That's even harder. It's like now everybody kind of knows who you are. Oh no, but now I want to do this. Why now? Trying to make money? Well, it's like, so just do it from the start. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that it becomes, and again, some people, I'll say this, kind of bluntly as well. Some people aren't brands. They just make a nice scarf in their house. That's a product. It's not a brand. But if you're trying to really sell something, you're trying to have a voice, I suggest you brand it. Because, we're being shouted at from every place. It's everyone's got something to say, but do we have to listen? Do we really have to listen? It's like, but if I know what you're about, you think about somebody like Oprah, she speaks, world stops, they listen, and she's built it that way, and she maintains it that way. It's not like she just built it and now she's just flying off the handle saying whatever she wants to say. So, you have to figure out if you're really a brand. Because if you're not really a brand, then branding is not for you. But if you're really trying to stand for something, you're really trying to get a message out there, it should be well branded. Doesn't have to be well scripted. It should just be well branded, so that it has a consistent flow and a consistent message.
You know what? I'm so glad we had the chance to do this because they were the key moments last time we spoke that I wanted to capture. There's a selfish part of this whole thing because, like, I feel like whenever I come across someone that really teaches me some stuff, I can like collect a podcast and then I've got it for my reference for years to come. I think this is going to be one of those things I listen to a couple of times as a reminder because I'm sure. Again, for people listening, I'm sure there's so many people thinking whether they're running their business, whether they're starting their new business, whether they're like a musician like me or an artist or a painter or a photographer, whatever. There's so many people that just feel like, oh my God, I have so much to do. The juggle is so like crazy and I don't want to drop any balls. And I to have that just calm and think about it, understand why you're doing it, and then to realize why it's so important to get it right if you're planning to do this long term. It's a beautiful message, man, and I thank you for the time. And as we think about like wrapping up this episode, is there anything else that you'd want to say to people on this note when it comes to branding and stepping forward now, tomorrow or next week when people are turning over a new leaf and gonna attack it? What's your final words of advice?
Man, I don't know if it's advice. I will say that examination is key to anything. One of the things that I've learned, I would say, in the last 3 years, from working more in branding is, simply put, there's a massive gap between a really amazing idea and putting that idea into motion. It's like you may have a beautiful voice. You may be able to, play a musical instrument beautifully. It's like the idea then would be become a musician. It's like, well, there's some work involved in becoming a musician. You know what I mean?
Couple of decades of practice.
There's some work in there.
Calluses on your fingers.
Right. It's like there's some work in there. It's like, you can write down a bunch of words that rhyme and call that a song. I don't know if it makes you a songwriter. I don't know that. And that's there's a great quote by Jay-Z where it's like, just because something looks easy doesn't mean it is. I worked really hard so that it will look easy. And it's like, that's it. That covers all walks of life. You see, LeBron James on the basketball court, man, he makes it look so easy.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, and I love basketball, I'm not trying to work as hard as LeBron James has worked on a basketball court to make it look that easy. I'm not. Well, I probably feel that way because I'm short. But nonetheless, it's like anything that we do, you got to work hard. It's like when we have these conversations, I appreciate what you said about it feeling selfish a little bit for you, but that's how I felt whenever you and I would talk about NFTs. It's like this, I'm going to just sit back and enjoy because you worked hard at it. By the time the world was talking about NFTs, it was old hat for you. Like you had been in the crypto space for a minute, where I'm just kind of dipping my foot in now. So, I've been around long enough to see artists struggle and to try to decipher what is the struggle and to try to help people not go down that path. It's, what do you want to do? If you can't answer that relatively quickly and easily, work on it a little bit more. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter, and you can't ever get where you're going if you don't know where you're going. It's like my dad, he wasn't a big fan of asking for directions. So I'm sure plenty of times we ended up places that we had no intention of going. You know what I mean? It's just, but we're here now. And then you try to make the most of it. And for those who don't know, as a kid growing up, you just with your parents hanging out. I didn't know that we weren't meant to end up here. But if you're trying to run a business, know where you want to go. And 9 times out of 10, you'll find the object is not money. Like trust me, you don't represent photographers for money.
You don't become a musician for money either.
For money,
that's for
like
sure.
you don't do it. You don't come up with a motto like disruption for good for money. Like you just don't do it. But the folks who are able to take something that they're passionate about, that they wake up in the morning, they can't wait to go to work, they can't wait to make whatever it is happen that they want to make happen. I think success comes. And whatever that means to you. Like, I'm away from family a lot when it comes to what I do for a living, and they have to put up with that. But I'm a genuinely happy person, so I think that they like that.
It's great to see as well, like the people in your network, whether it's the photographers that obviously we've worked with on the agency side. It's like the on my company, because I know that you said agency is always a dodgy word.
Yeah, exactly.
But like on my end, it's like to see how people react to you and 6+1 and working with you is such a good vibe, and the energy you have and everything you're doing, it's really something deeper, and I think that's why I connected with you and what you do so much. But James Hill, thank you so much for doing this episode.
Absolutely, man. Thank you,
and
man.
I'll be back in New York in a year's time. We'll do this again.
Sounds good, man. It'll be a lot of fun.
Legend.
Yeah, man. Thank you, bro.
Thank you for that. That's a fucking great episode.